What's up, guys? My name's Alexis, your host with Praises in the Pod, and y'all are in for a treat today. We got Gwyn Andrews, and she is going to be jumping into her testimony and what all God has done in her life. So we're going to start off in prayer, and then we're going to jump right in. So here we go. Lord, Heavenly Father, thank you for today and all of your many blessings, dear God. You just continue to bless us, and just you walk beside us, you lead us, you guide us, and we just are so appreciative of that, Lord God. We pray that you speak to us and through us today, and let this episode glorify you. In Jesus Christ's name, I pray. Amen. Amen, girl. So let's jump in.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing.
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian household. My dad's a pastor ever since I was born until present day. And I knew from an early start that I was athletic. I sought out competition in every corner of my life. My parents put me in softball, track, basketball, soccer, anything that required athleticism I was a part of, even gymnastics for a short period. That's exactly right. Yeah. So I grew up playing sports and going to church, and that was pretty much my entire life.
Your whole family is like super like competitive. So I bet every little thing in your life, y'all made it a competition.
Yes, very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have an older brother too, and y'all are pretty, right? No, he's younger.
Yes,
He's younger.
yeah.
But y'all are still really close in age.
Yes, about 2 years.
Yes. So I bet that was like something like, you know, always having a brother right there, and just like he's competitive too. So you just grew up in that. So like in high school, you're playing basketball. And so tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about high school. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I started, I guess high school would start with AAU basketball, which is a travel basketball for people that aren't familiar. I started that in 6th grade and then played that all throughout until my senior year. But my sophomore year of high school, I transferred from Veterans High School to Central Fellowship to play basketball. My dad became the coach at Central Fellowship. And so when I walked into high school, I don't want to be cocky, but the it girl, because private schools didn't have new people show up. So it was like, oh, there's new fresh blood. So I showed up, I was athletic, and that became my identity in high school, was just the athleticism. I was the athletic girl, and that's what I did from sophomore year through senior year. Was every sports league, every competition, every game I could play, and I was going to do it to the best of my ability for me.
Wow. Like, I relate to that, but in middle school, like, because in my testimony, I talk about how I got to high school and I wasn't the best anymore. Like, that took such a toll on me, because, you know, you grow up and you're like, oh my gosh, you're the best on the team. You got all this going for you. And then it's like, boom. So for you, you're like, you get there and you're like, that's your identity.
Yeah. And it was put on me. I would say that I loved it at the time, but I definitely think that I was kind of put into a box where that was like, Gwen's the athletic girl. And I went with it and I ran with it.
So your dream probably is to go off to college and play.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. How's scouting work? Like, did you already know where you wanted to go, or like what? Just go into it.
Yeah. So going back to AAU, that would be where specifically scouts look for you. So every summer, my entire summer from 6th grade on looked like going to Kentucky or Atlanta or Chicago and playing in travel games, waking up at 6 a.m. and you have a game 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 p.m. Is that night, 12 p.m., or is that afternoon? I don't even know.
No, that's right. That's
lunchtime game. Yes. You would just play that all day, every day. And at these competitions, coaches from colleges would come. You would invite them. You'd email them. They would come scout out your ability. So that was a very high pressure, high intensity environment to be put in. That, along with obviously the high school aspect of getting your highlight reels, getting your stats all together, having a YouTube channel that is just the best moments of your career. You take those, you email them to whatever coach or college you're interested in, and then hopefully they reciprocate. You go to a camp. If you show up and show out at the camp, you continue the conversation until they offer you a position on the team.
So that's what happened with you. So where do you end up going, and what does that look like? Like, I know that's a dream come true.
Yeah.
So
at the time I was excelling in not only basketball, but track. So I wanted to find a college, whether that was small or big, that would allow me in the fall and spring to participate in basketball as well as track. That ultimately led me with the Hope Scholarship and all the benefits of staying in Georgia. That led me to sign with Truett McConnell in Cleveland, Georgia.
Nice. And so, like, when you go there, that's a new environment. Like, you've never been there before. Did you have friends that went there?
No, I knew nothing about the college. The craziest thing was too, when I went to, a lot of times you as a recruit are invited to watch the team play, because it's also, you're going into a new environment. You want to make sure the teammates you're walking in with are going to be people that you're going to jive with. So when I went to a game with my parents after we sat down with the coach, and I had zero intention of committing to a position on the team, and we were just sitting there, and I was like, Coach, I think I want to be on your team. And my parents were like,
I know Billy was like, Gwen, we did not discuss this.
And it just, something just came over me. And at the time, I wouldn't have told you it was the Holy Spirit, but I think it was. And I just said, Coach, I want to be on the team. I'm ready. Let's do this. And we left that meeting like, well, I guess I'm going to Truett. Like,
wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, girl. Like, that does seem like a little crazy, because usually I feel like y'all would go home, y'all would run statistics about things, just how your dad is. I know.
Oh, for sure.
Because I didn't say this, like, he is a pastor at our church. So I know that Billy's very analytical about things and going to run it through. Wow. But you're like, I know.
I was like, let's do it. Yep. If I'm going to make a decision, it's going to be this one. Yeah.
Awesome. So you move, and jump us into that. Like, what does that look like for you? Do you make friends right off the bat? What's the situation with basketball and track? Like, go into it, girl.
I think I had a misinterpretation of what college looked like. I mean, growing up watching Disney, and my favorite movie was Monsters University. I thought it was going to be this, like, just rallying. You make friends right off the bat, lifetime clubs, sororities, fraternities, all this fun stuff. The college I was at had 4,000 students. About 1,000 of them, I would say, were maybe online. I could be wrong. Very small environment. I thought initially, I'm coming from a small private school, high school, small private school, college, won't be any different. Right off the bat, I realized that I had always told myself I was an extrovert, but it was only because I was ever surrounded by people that wanted to get to know me, whether that was within the church of being the pastor's daughter or being the athletic girl in high school. Something about whatever position I was in attracted people to be my friend, whereas showing up to an environment where nobody knows who I am, nobody cares who my dad is, nobody cares about my last name. It was like I had to actually figure out how to make friends. And that was a very, very hard wake-up call for me, because I had nothing to run on other than, I played basketball. Well, half the school played a sport because it was so small. So it was like that meant nothing for me. So it was hard to make friends initially. I mean, my roommate became a really good friend of mine at the time. And I would say I became close with my teammates, as close as I would allow myself to get to them. But as far as sports, aside from that, I didn't have any fruitful relationships while I was there.
Oh, that's tough, girl. Especially going from a hometown where, like, you're so loved, you have so many friends, like, all this, and then you go, and it feels probably like isolation.
Yes,
almost
much
like
so.
You go into a season of isolation where you're not sure, like, what's going on? Am I the problem?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, wow. Yeah. So do you, like, act out, like, in this, like, trying to find attention somewhere, or, how does that work?
I remember the first night, they did a good job of creating spaces for freshmen to get to know each other. And there was this boy who ended up being a good friend of ours in our friend group. He came over, and I introduced myself to him, and he was like, what's your testimony? Like, tell me about your life. And that was the first time I had ever heard the phrase testimony in a Christian environment, where I acknowledged, this is where I tell somebody how I got saved or what God has done in my life. And I had nothing to give him because I was still actively living in my sin. And so I remember making up something. I couldn't even tell you what I said. And after that, I was like, this kid's really cool. I'll be friends with him. And it felt like I was being a shell of myself, because I was surrounded by good Christian people in my environment. I didn't feel good enough to be their friend, but then the bad people, I wasn't bad enough to be their friend. Okay. So I was stuck in this spot where I still want these people that are good to think that I'm good, but I also identify with these people that are bad. And so I didn't have any good friendships. I wouldn't allow myself to let people see who I actually was on the inside as a pastor's daughter, as somebody who claims to be following Christ, while still trying to keep up this good image around me.
Would you say that you're, like, living a double life, like, when you're hanging out with these people versus,
for sure.
Like,
it was multiple lives, because at home I was somebody, at my high school with my high school friends I was somebody, at my team, I'm somebody, and then my supposed friends outside of basketball, I'm somebody. So
blend it in where you can.
exactly. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Girl. So does anything like transpire with this boy, or does something else come?
No, so this guy was just strictly a friend. Yes, yes, very much so. Yeah, he's a great guy. He's actually gone off to be pastor now. So he's doing some amazing things. So walking into college, my parents met in high school. They got married in college. I had always heard the fictional stories of, meeting your husband in high school. So I thought, this is it. This is where I'm going to meet my husband. Relationships had always been a struggle for me growing up in high school, just looking for that male attention because I identified that with worth. And I walked in thinking, this is where I'm going to meet my husband. So every guy I met that I was remotely attracted to or remotely could bring something to the table, I was like, this could be him. So that in and of itself manifested into an unhealthy desire to look for male attention. And so I met this one guy. He didn't really show me much attention, but off rip, I knew that there was physical attraction. And so we kind of kept in contact. And the very first night that we spent together was in sexual sin. And after that, I woke up the next morning, went back to my dorm room and thought to myself, I had indulged in sexual sin prior in high school, but I had never done it in a situation where I wasn't dating the guy. And so to me, that was very abnormal. And it was something I could either turn away from and repent, or something I could completely indulge in. And I decided to completely indulge in it. So it became a game for me. The next morning, we went to the cafe, me and some of the teammates, and I saw the guy and I tried to say hi to him and he completely walked past me. And I had never in my life experienced something like that. And so in my head, I thought it was a game at this point. I was like, okay, you're not going to win this battle.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to win this. We're not going to do this at night and then you not acknowledge me in the morning. So that became a competition for me. Like I said, I sought out competition in every aspect of my life. And I was like, you're not going to win this. So we continued to stay in touch. We continued to fraternize, for lack of a better word. And then the third time that we hooked up, the condom broke. And so that was a big wake-up call for both of us. We never pursued an actual relationship. We knew surface level we cared about each other, but it wasn't something that we both wanted to make public. And for me, it fit the narrative in my head that I was getting attention without anybody having to know. It was satisfying this desire I had. I felt wanted and I felt worthy. And he was a foreign exchange student, so a lot of people weren't familiar with him. He was playing soccer. And so it was this sneaky little decisive thing I had on the side where I get to do this. Nobody gets to know about it. Another secret life that I had developed while being on campus. And then in front of everybody, I get to be this fun, cool basketball player, Christ-loving girl. So the condom broke. We immediately ran and told some of our other friends. Another girl had been dating a guy on the basketball team. And so we told them. And they decided that we should go get a plan B. And at the time, I didn't really know what that was. I was like, whatever will keep me from getting pregnant, let's do it.
Yeah.
So the dad, or the guy that I had been hooking up with, he went and bought a plan B. And I took it within 12 hours. On the label, it'll tell you within 72 hours, you're good. You won't get pregnant. So I took the plan B, and then that was the last time I've ever seen him. So that next morning, I went back to my dorm room. We both decided we don't need to see each other anymore. Let's call it. This is not something that's benefiting us. We had a scare. We're both college athletes. This is not going to be a good situation if we continue. And so that night we called it. He went back to soccer, and then I went back to basketball.
Wow. Wow, girl. So the condom breaking is basically like a moment where you're both scared, and then you're like, I'm done. Like, we're done. And you just think that you're about to go on with your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you just thought that this was just like a thing that we're just going to move on from, but that was not the case. So go into a little bit of that.
Yeah. So my whole life, I think I like to use the phrase, the Lord was clocking me. Like,
he's like your teeth.
He's like, Gwyn, wake up. Gwyn, wake up. Come on, let's go. Like, you keep claiming me in public and denying me in private. What's going on here? This can't be the case. So to me, at that moment in my life, the condom breaking was the Lord clocking me. Like, hey, you're fooling around and you need to get out of it. I've blessed you with all these things. Go back to the things that you've been blessed with. So I continued to wake up every morning, go play basketball. At this point, a lot of it's fuzzy for me, but I think I was very numb at this moment. I remember I had two really good friends who I had been calling, and I was updating them about this relationship and the things that have happened since the condom breaking. And I remember waiting for my period. Like every single time I would go to the bathroom, I was just like waiting for my period. That's all that I cared about in those moments. That's my only memory of the next month or so. So that was around November 19th-ish. And then eventually I had one of my best friends come up to see me at Truett and spend the weekend there. And she said, you need to take a pregnancy test. Like let's just go ahead and put this to rest, because if you are pregnant, taking the test won't change anything. If you aren't, this will satisfy that scarcity that you have about being pregnant. So I make her go into the CVS because I'm too scared. Because
y'all ain't gonna catch me right there.
The town is so small. I'm like, somebody's gonna know somebody. I'm not walking in there buying a pregnancy test. So she walks in, she buys it for me. We go to Wendy's, we go to a bathroom, and I take the pregnancy test. Well, we're looking at it and we're like, this says it's pregnant, but also we have no clue how to read this.
Girl, hang on, time out. Why did we go to Wendy's?
But okay, I'm a burger lover. Okay, Wendy's is just where we went. So we were at Wendy's and we were like, we can't go back to my dorm because I had a roommate. We're not doing it in a public communal bathroom. Like, that's not where I'm about to find out I'm pregnant.
Wendy's is a public.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I never actually. I'll have to ponder on that later.
Okay, so we take it at Wendy's.
So we take it at Wendy's, and she is like, Gwyn, I think this is pregnant, because it showed up really quick. And on the instructions, it'll be like, give it 5 to 10 minutes or however that works. Yeah. And we were like, no, it's wrong. So I'm like crouched. She has a video of me. I'm like crouched down on the bathroom, like with this giant manual, like reading how in the world, like what does which it's either it is or it isn't. Yeah. It's not that difficult. At the time, I thought it was.
But we want to believe, no, this thing's wrong, surely.
I'm fully sure I convinced myself.
I do think it's a little comical that we live in this age where we're recording these moments. Yes. You know what I'm saying? And it's like we're looking at it and we're like, that was such a serious moment, and we're like so laughable. Yes. Like we're laughing at this.
I mean, I remember laughing because I was at the point in my mentality where I was just like, oh, of course this would happen to me. Typical pastor's daughter. Like, I've got my whole life set up for me. Of course I'm going to go be foolish and get pregnant. Yeah. And I also had that it won't happen to me. Yeah. That was my continuous, it won't happen to me. How could it? Like, the Lord wouldn't do that, as if the Lord made me go hook up or say. Right. Yeah, you would think. So we go back to my college dorm. I lay my head on my pillow. I'm sound asleep. I don't even think about it. She ends up going home. Or no, excuse me, she doesn't go home yet. The next day I wake up, I go tell some of the teammate that I had talked to the night the condom broke. I tell her and another girl, and then I had my other friends. So we've got 3 girls and me. And so they say, you've got to go take another pregnancy test. Like, let us look at it and we'll confirm or deny this for you, because apparently I couldn't. They're in my search.
Yeah, so they've done it many of times.
Oh, unfortunately, I'm sure they have. But that's no knock on them. But I mean, joking. No, I mean, seriously though, most girls our age have probably taken a pregnancy test. So we drive, I go to pick them up. Well, they both get in, so there's 4 of us. This other girl gets in the car. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to keep a lid on this. This is mortifying. I don't even know what's going on. And this random girl gets in who I've seen maybe twice around campus, which is rare considering how small it is. So I'm like, hey, I'm Gwyn. Like, do you want to come take some pregnancy tests with us? And she kind of giggles. Her name was Zoe. So we go to Walmart. We buy like 5 or 6. We know for a fact that 2 of these girls are most likely not pregnant. So we're like, everybody's going to take a test. We'll compare our tests as like pregnancy roulette. Like, who's the pregnant one here? So we all go back to the dorm. Everybody's kind of like joking around and like just having a good time. And I'm sitting there like, I know that this is funny, but it's not funny. Like, it felt like nobody was really taking serious. And that may have been a coping mechanism, but it genuinely felt like nobody cared. Nobody was taking this seriously. So everybody takes a test. Mine shows up immediately, very visibly positive pregnancy test. And I'm like, well, crap. What do I do now? But at the time, I still in my head was like, It's not. I was looking and like Google says if you're dehydrated, it'll show up positive. If you're this, that, and the other. And I was like, it is anything but. It is anything but. So I go and I immediately tell the dad. I send him a picture of the pregnancy test and I'm like, hey, I took some tests and they're showing up positive. Well, at this point, he was staying in Georgia for soccer. He had flown back to Kansas for Christmas break. So we're on the verge of like school ending, fall semester. He's back in Argentina where he lived. And I'm telling him and he's like, you've got to get an abortion immediately off rip. That was his response. And so I share with the girls, this is all happening the same night. I share with the girls, like, this is his response. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I knew abortion was bad the same way I knew sex and drugs were bad. Like, you just don't do them. But I didn't know truly what it entailed. So I tell him abortion's not an option for me. And I wish that I could say I said it wasn't an option for me because of my beliefs around it, but it wasn't an option for me because of the length I would have to go to and the money it would cost. So I'm like on the phone, I'm calling every single clinic and hospital in the area, asking them, do you provide abortions? Do you do abortions?
Wow.
Because even after telling him no, I'm still like, this might be my only viable option. Well, eventually, me and the girls, we do a bunch of research and we discovered the abortion pill. And so in my mind, I was like, the abortion pill is drastically different from the procedure. The baby's about 4 weeks at this point. She doesn't have a heartbeat. She doesn't really even know what's going on. I had just taken a plan B. So what's the harm in taking another pill? It's basically just a second. It's like a plan C. Like, it's fine. So I'm calling all these clinics, all these hospitals. Nobody will provide me an abortion pill because of the heartbeat bill in Georgia. And so I look up Planned Parenthood. There's a Planned Parenthood in Atlanta that will give you abortion pill before 6 weeks. So I make an appointment at this Planned Parenthood and it's going to be like $600. So I'm like asking the girls, where do I get this money? The dad said that he would transfer me money. All the girls are like, it's okay. Like, one of the girls offered to drive me because I didn't know what kind of medical state I would be in after taking this pill. So I had this whole plan. I was going to play my last basketball game on December 16th. I was going to tell my parents I had to stay an extra day for basketball. One of my teammates was going to drive me to get the abortion pill. I would take it, come home for Christmas break, act like nothing ever happened. I was going to go back to basketball. My life was going to stay the same. I would use this as a form of the Lord clocking me. I would stop hooking up with people and be done. Well, that's not what happened, obviously, because our plans are not the Lord's plans.
Yeah.
So that night, again, like I mentioned, it felt like a lot of people weren't taking it seriously. The two girls that were my teammates left. My friend had left, my home friend. So it was just me and Zoe, the girl that I'd met, who I didn't know.
Yeah.
Just this, literally, that's how lonely I was. I don't think I put enough emphasis on the fact that that's how lonely I was at that moment, that I didn't want to go back to my dorm. So I stayed in the dorm room with a girl that I didn't know. And so me and her are just sitting there, and she kind of starts the whole process of the abortion and the pregnancy. She was quiet. She was the only one in the room, aside from my hometown best friend, but she was trying to grapple with all of this. She was the only one that was very quiet. Like, something was bothering her spirit, I think. So she sits me down and she's like, hey, I'm a pastor's daughter too. I can't imagine what you're going through right now. This is crazy. She's sharing with me stories about women that she knows that have had abortions. She's telling me about other options. And I'm just in complete denial. I'm like, I appreciate your help, but this is the only option for me. This is the only route that gets me back to my scholarship. And in the back of my mind was, I had always been so excited to be a mom. I mean, every girl, I think, at some point in their life envisions themselves being a mom. So I was excited. Part of me was excited. Part of me wasn't accepting the fact that I was pregnant. And then the other part of me was thinking about my parents and how my mom as well, but specifically my dad, has given up so much to get me to this point of playing basketball. And I threw it all away for a secret that nobody knew I was living. So I'm getting ready. I'm packing up my stuff. And Zoe is like, hey, can you sit down for a second? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And she says, I know that you don't think that there's a way out. And I know that there's a lot of pressure surrounding the decisions that you're trying to make right now. But you need to know that whether you get this abortion or not, that you will always be a mom. And that the Lord has placed this baby for such a time as this. And this baby is made in the likeness and image of Christ. And you will never be able to escape that. Even if you get this abortion, you will forever be this baby's mother. And the Lord has chosen you to be this baby's mother. And I was so angry at this girl. I mean, I was furious because I was like, how dare you? You don't know me. How dare you sit here and try to hold Christ over my head when I am internally trying to grapple with this discernment and conviction of these decisions that I'm making. I've got all these people around me who are hyping me up, telling me, like, you know, this is a decision. It's okay. This is what women have to do sometimes. And then I've got this girl who doesn't know me telling me what to do with my body at the time. So I go back to my dorm room, I lay my head on my pillow, and I'm just like, I remember my dad told me later on that night my parents had called me, that my dad had FaceTimed me, and he, you know, was just filling me out, like, how are you doing? How's basketball going? Are you excited for your game? And after a while back, we had this conversation. He told me that he knew something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. So everybody around me knew something was going on with me. So again, for the probably second or third night in a row, I put my head on my pillow. I grappled with my decisions, and I decided I was still going to go through with the abortion. Well, the next day we had practice before our game, and there was one girl that I had become really good friends with. Her name is Millie. She's amazing. She was married at the time, so she was a little bit older, 5th-year senior on the team. And I pulled her aside because I was like, well, if Zoe knows and all these random people know,
Might as well tell Millie.
who knows who the dad is telling?
Yeah.
I might as well tell Millie. And I felt this like pull to tell Millie. Well, she was like, she kind of giggled like she didn't believe me because, again, nobody would have thought that I was going to be doing this. And she said, can I take you back to your dorm room for a little bit after practice? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we get in my dorm room, and she just starts crying. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong?
I'm the one that's
Yeah, like, I was like, why are
I'm
you
the one that's under the
crying? So she said that about 3 months before the season had started, she was pregnant, and that she ended up having a miscarriage before the season. And I remember sitting there mourning her miscarriage as if she was still a mother and she had lost a baby. And looking back at that and being like, I was about to make the same decision in a different form.
Yeah.
And I'm mourning this mother who lost her baby while I'm about to get rid of my baby. How does that make sense? So I'm sitting there, and she's like, why? Like, tell me, what is the root of your fear and your, because I told her I was excited to be a mom. She said, what is the root of your fear in this? And I said, I can't go home and tell my parents. I can't go home, and part of it was selfishness of giving up a life that I had worked so hard for, and part of it was the disappointment that my parents, I knew they would be feeling.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't do it. And she said, Gwyn, everything that you have told me about your parents, I promise you, if you go home and tell them, it will not turn out the way that you think. And I was like, okay. And so again, I was like angry at this girl who I confided in for giving me good advice. And I played my last basketball game. I don't remember going home. I think a lot of this is compartmentalizing in my brain of like fuzziness. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember anybody else that I had talked to, but I remember going home, and I had started getting morning sickness, which I was unaware was a symptom of pregnancy. So
you didn't.
when I tell you I didn't know jack squat, like, I don't know if I just didn't pay attention in health class, or I don't know what it was. I didn't know any of those. So I'm starting to get morning sickness, and my mom and dad are like, what's going on? Like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I just got the stomach bug. Well, stomach bug turned into food poisoning, turned into, we might
Because
need
it just kept going.
It just kept going. I could not hold my food. Like, it was probably for a week and a half. I was trying to throw up in private. Like, again, still not realizing this is a symptom of being pregnant. I literally thought I might have the stomach bug. Like, it was so, I don't even know what was going on. Well, I remember praying, it was coming close to where I had to make that decision, that window time of if I'm going back to school or not. And I remember praying to the Lord and saying, Lord, I cannot muster up the strength to tell my parents. I need you to tell them I literally said, I need you to tell them, Lord, because I can't do it. So we go, me and my mom get in the car. We take Emery to one of her friends' houses, which Emery's my little sister. And as we're driving back, I'm like, Mom, I feel like I'm about to throw up again. I need you to like get home quick. And she turns and looks at me and she goes, are you pregnant? And I was like, what? And she was like, are you pregnant? And I was like, no, I'm not pregnant.
The opportunity was
Right. Yeah.
but in a pinch like that, I'm saying no too. I'm scared.
I mean, I'm literally like, Lord, do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm like, nope.
No, this ain't it.
Consistent pattern in my life. So we get home and I just start crying and I said, I am pregnant. And she thought I was joking.
Yeah.
She's like, what? No, you're not. And I was like, I'm pregnant. Yes, I am. So it's just me and my mom. And she said, well, who's the dad? And I told her his name. And she said, what's his last name? And I said, I don't know. And so my dad comes in there and he is furious, as one would be. I mean, they literally cannot. They didn't know I was having sex, much less at a point now where I'd be willing to do it with somebody I'm not even in a relationship with. Not that that makes it okay, but that also shows you how deep you're in.
You're in sin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so a lot of that as well is fuzzy, but I remember my dad obviously was extremely frustrated. My mom is trying to grapple with what's going on. They don't even believe me. I can't even give them the last name of the dad. Like, it is just this crazy situation. Well, they sit me down and I just spill my guts out. Like, I'm just telling them from high school on, everything that I had been indulging in, everything that I had been a part of that led me to getting to this moment. And so, to my surprise, everybody told me this would happen. I didn't think it was true. I wasn't kicked out. I wasn't condemned. I mean, voices were raised, but I wasn't screamed at. I wasn't, they absolutely covered me in mercy and grace. And I think that time really was a healing moment for me and my mom, because my mom and me have polar opposite personalities. She's emotional. I'm stone cold. I'm very much like my dad in a lot of ways, very analytical. My mom's all about feelings and let's like dissect people and learn how they do what they do. And I'm like, what? They like
what?
Who cares? So that time I think really gave me an opportunity to sit with my mom and learn and develop a relationship with her. But my dad had a hard time for about 2 weeks. There was a kind of a gap period where we didn't really speak to each other a lot. And I know a lot of it was disappointment, and I don't have any resentment or fault my dad for that, because I truly cannot imagine like I said at the beginning, everything that he had given up and sacrificed for. He didn't even have a father growing up doing these things, and I did. And I basically threw it all in their face.
Yeah. But, too, we want so much more for our kids. And so when you're hurt, obviously there's going to be emotions and everything else. Like, our flesh is going to take over in those moments. But, for the most part, you said, like, you weren't condemned. You weren't kicked out of your house. They showed you that grace and mercy. And just like, because they are Christ followers and they're so obedient and they just have been moving with Christ for so long, like, how would they have reacted if they wouldn't have known Christ? Like, and it's just like, God, go back for just a second too. Yeah. Because I'm like so in the story, but I have so much. Hang on. God is so intentional about the people that he sends in our lives. Because I just think about Zoe. Like, you don't even know her. And that day, she's somebody that pours into you and reminds you, like, of all that Christ is and how he's still going to love you, and how that baby is so wonderfully made in his, in his likeness. So then you get Millie saying the same stuff, like trying to open your eyes even more. And it's just so beautiful that God sent those people literally so that you didn't continue with that appointment, that you did go home. And I just that just blows me away how he's just so intentional about people in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, even in looking back at what little friendships and relationships I had while spending my time at Truett McConnell, those were the two people that I went to for advice or counseling, and those were the two people that led me, along with the Holy Spirit, to keep my baby. And so it truly is, I mean, looking back, the Lord is just like,
yes,
it's fascinating, to be honest. Like, there's no other explanation for it. It baffles me that if anybody could ever have another explanation for something like that. So fast forward, we had my parents, so we had come up with this solution. We were going to send me back to Truett. I was going to finish out my basketball season. We were hoping I'd be skinny enough to just, nobody would we were fingers crossed, you'll be skinny enough, nobody will know. I'd finish out my year at Truett, start just wearing bigger clothes when it got cold, and come home, have the baby. We didn't know what we were going to do from then on. And this whole time I'm in communication with the father as well. And he is at the time very frustrated with me for not getting the abortion, because now he's got to go home and tell his parents that he's hooking up with a girl in America and then he got her pregnant.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what his parents thought, and so he's frustrated. I'm frustrated. My parents, we literally don't know what to do. And the night before it was time for me to come back, because I had to report back early for practice, we were like, we can't, this doesn't make sense. We can't do this. What if I have a complication while I'm at school and I'm, something's going wrong and nobody even knows I'm pregnant and they have to get me to the hospital. There's a lot of what ifs. What if I lose the baby through a basketball game? And there's just a lot of things that wouldn't have been suffice for the situation. So my mom, we get in the car that morning, we drive up to Truett McConnell, 3-hour drive. Whole time I'm still throwing up. It was just a nightmare of a car ride on these windy back roads in Georgia. I get to practice and I pull my coach aside before practice and I sat him down and I said, Coach, I knew a big thing for him was you need to show up and be intentional about your take. If you aren't going to be intentional about this spot, somebody else will take it. So you have to be intentional about showing up to practice and being diligent with your time. So I sat him down and I kind of used that and I said, Coach, I don't think that this spring semester I'm going to be intentional with my time on this team, and I think it would be better suited for somebody else. I think that you would have a better outcome. There would be more benefit to the team if you replaced me. Wow. And I will not be returning to the basketball team. Obviously, he's like, what in the world? Yeah. Didn't even expect this. And he said, I'll see you around. I said, no, Coach, I'm not returning to Truett. I'm going home. And he kind of just accepted it. There wasn't a lot of questions. And I went down to the locker room. I didn't say goodbye to any of my teammates. I walked in. They're all in there getting ready for practice. I packed up my stuff and I walked out.
I will say that you are very level-headed, right? You're just a more stable, that type of person. What are your emotions like, girl? Are you all over the place? You're crying, or you still kind of had that same?
In the conversation with my coach, I started to tear up because a lot of the self-image, the fear of having a bad self-image is letting people down. Yeah. And so even in this, I'm still relying on my own strength of my coach is going to think something bad of me now. So I am I almost tried to make it seem like I was doing him a favor by removing myself, because even then I'm still helping. So I've started tearing up a smidge, and then I collected myself. I went downstairs. Again, I still don't want anybody to know anything's going on. Millie knew. She knew what was going on, but she didn't say anything. I go and I pack up my stuff. I'm just stone cold, not acknowledging any of my teammates, not looking them in the eyes, which they also, I don't want to say they didn't care, but they didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. I didn't think I was packing up my stuff to never return. No. Yeah. So I leave and I don't say anything to anybody. My mom and me attempt to pack up my dorm room and we drive home, and I start after practice getting texts from my teammates you'll be missed. And it wasn't uncommon for people to leave because people graduated early. We had a lot of injuries that year. So I was just one of the many that just weren't returning. So it wasn't uncommon. And so I got a couple texts from my teammates saying that I'll be missed. And I responded to them. I said, it's been so great meeting you guys. Thank you. And me and my mom went home. So,
wow. Yeah. Dang, girl. I bet that is just such a heartbreaking thing for you, because that's something that you worked for your whole life, basically. And now you had to give it all up
Yep.
for a guy that you hooked up with for a few times. And like, that is so sad. That is so sad, especially like knowing that it was just a fleshly desire and God never planned like that for our lives. Like, obviously a blessing, you know, your baby was a blessing. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like he just had so much more. And so like, it's so hard, you know? So let's fast forward a little bit. How do you come to the decision that y'all did make, I guess?
Yeah, so I initially told my parents, I don't want anybody to know. This is still out of self-image. I don't want anybody to know that I'm pregnant. I was mortified. Obviously, thousands of people around Warner Robins know who we are because of my dad's position on staff. And my parents were like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but if you want to keep it private, that's fine. We'll do it. So I got pregnant I came home January of 2023. From January to April, I went out and about. I acted normal. We just told people I didn't enjoy the school. I was still looking for another school to go play basketball. That was going to be it. We kind of were light with our answers. Around February is when I told Kellen and Emery, and then we shared with another pastor and his wife, Jeremy and Sharon, on staff what we were going through. My mom shared with Joe, Betsy, and Ed. They'll come into play later. They're important parts of the puzzle. But my parents, Sunday of Easter was my last Sunday showing up out and about, being there. And I do want to mention that while I was home, my dad was forcing me to go to CR. I was mortified to go to CR because I thought that's where
Stigma, girl.
That's where broken people go. It is. And now it's my favorite. Yeah. But I was like, what do I look like as a pastor's daughter walking into CR? So I would go sit in the very top and Caleb would be like, hey, you can come to the basement and hang out with us. I'm like, nope. No, you did not see me here. I'm not here. So April's when I started going into what I like to call hiding. I didn't work. I did online school. Only 2 of my friends knew. It was very, very quiet, I would like to say.
And it was, girl.
It sure was.
Me being on the other side, this was like locked tight.
Yeah.
Okay, this was locked tight information.
Yeah. Even Kellen's girlfriend, which I can tell this story later if we have time, she had no clue. She would come over to the house. I told my mom, I said, we need to put a bell on her. Because I'd walk around the house in a huge t-shirt just with my belly out. And I'm like having to crouch down behind a couch because she's in the kitchen. I didn't even know. She didn't even know. And everybody just thought, oh, you stopped playing basketball. Maybe you're gaining a little bit of weight because you're not doing as much. Like that was what it was. So this whole time I'm like grappling with, what am I going to do? I'm in communication with the Father this whole summer or this whole spring into the summer. Am I going to be a single parent? What does custody look like with somebody who lives in another country? Do I have the financial means to take care of this baby? How long are my parents going to help, if at all? Because at this point they were like, you're making big girl decisions. You're going to be a big girl now. And I had all these things that I was trying to figure out. Well, Joe, Betsy, and Ed, I don't know if you are familiar with them. They are an amazing elderly couple at Southside. My mom's really good friends with Joe, Betsy. She is on the board of Covenant Care Adoptions. So Joe Betsy told my mom, have Gwyn go see one of the birth counselors, because obviously with not talking to a lot of people, there's not a lot of counseling going on. There's not a lot of fruitful dialogue, figuring out things. So I did online counseling with my dad, or not with my dad, but my dad put me in there. And I remember looking at the counselor and being like, I just want you to know my dad's making me do this, so we don't have to talk. We could sit here for 55 minutes and let the time run out and you get paid, but I'm not talking to you. Well, obviously that was false, and she ended up being such a blessing. So I'm doing online counseling through a church in Atlanta. I'm going to visit the birth counselor up in Macon, and I sit down with her and she says to me, whether you decide to parent or do adoption, we're going to walk with you through this. We're going to help you financially. We're going to help you in any area that we can. So immediately in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I'll just keep up this relationship. And then eventually when I have the baby, they can financially support me. Perfect. Well, the more that I learn about open adoption specifically, not just adoption, but open adoption, and I did a lot of reading, and the summers where I really grew my love for knowledge and reading and studying the Bible. And I truly believe that I did have discernment in the Holy Spirit and conviction when I was younger, but it was almost as if I woke up one morning and just colors were brighter and people were happier. And it was just this ratifying experience of I couldn't even, I mean, there's no words. I know you know what I'm talking about, of the Holy Spirit just fully being inside of me, me fully surrendering, having to be in the quiet, in the solitude, when my whole life I had chased chaos and dopamine. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
So I'm studying, I ended up reading this book, and in the book, it was specifically referring to the African American community, but in the book, it talks about the state that America is at in the single mother households and what your child is immediately susceptible to statistically by being in a single parent home versus a parent home with a mom and a dad. And the numbers were off the charts. I mean, I remember initially thinking there's no way that just because I'm a single mother and I choose to parent my daughter, that these are immediately what she's more susceptible to. So that off rip was a big indicator for me of there's got to be another way. There's got to be something. And then there was a lot of tension with the dad and the trying to figure out what does custody look like. Once I introduced the idea of open adoption to him, he pushed back and said, if you don't want the baby, my parents will take the baby and we'll raise the baby in Argentina. And that was really hard at the moment, at the time, because I thought, you didn't even want this baby.
Yeah.
You wanted me to kill this baby, and now you're asking me to give this baby to you.
Yeah.
How does that make sense? And I understand where he was at in his thought process at that time, but that was something that we were working through. Ultimately, there was a lot of indicators to me where the more I learned about open adoption, the more I realized if I choose open adoption, I am putting my baby into a home where there are two parents who are married, and at the center of their relationship is Christ. They are ready and equipped to have this baby. They are prepared for this baby. And I got to completely see through a profile, which we can get into this more as well. A profile is a book of everything that they want you to know about them and their family and the adoption agency. And I read these profiles, so I'm learning all about these families who are just itching to have a baby because of whether they aren't able to or they just feel called to do adoption. And I remember looking back at my time while being pregnant, and even when I didn't even know about open adoption, I didn't see myself parenting. And it was a very weird fog where I knew I was pregnant. I knew eventually I would have a little 1-year-old on my arm at Southside. Everybody would know. But what does that look like? I couldn't figure it out. And it was because the Lord, I think, was preparing my mind for a different decision. So the more I learned about open adoption, the more I learned about single motherhood, and the more I learned about how the legal process within Georgia and the pushback I was getting from the father, I just thought this has to be the best case scenario for my daughter. I think this would be the most fruitful option. And there was obviously a lot of grappling with that decision of almost ripping the baby from the mother that she has known for 9 months, and my parents not getting to be grandparents in the way that they had envisioned, and my brother and sister not getting to be aunt and uncles. But around June of 2023 is when I officially made the commitment to the agency that I would place my daughter for adoption. We got the dad to sign off. He had to sign his rights away before I could continue, since I had legally identified him as the father. And I went through a bunch of scrapbooks that are basically families that are options for me to pick to place my daughter with. And I initially wasn't very excited about the options that I had. A lot of them, it's very superficial things that you can kind of pick out. But one of the families was in Metro Atlanta, and I didn't want her to grow up in Metro Atlanta. One of the families had already adopted 4 or 5 kids, and I initially wanted a family that wouldn't have been able to have a baby of their own.
Yeah.
Well, I come across the very last profile of this family, and it is just the most beautiful Southern Belle porch. They're on their porch. They've got an American flag in the back, and I'm immediately like, I love this. This is great. So I open it up, and the very first sentence of the letter that they write to the birth moms is, whether you decide to parent or do an open adoption plan, we are so thankful that you chose life. And I remember thinking, who would have thought that this woman's first sentence on her book is immediately speaking to me? I know that she wrote this almost 10 years ago. I had been waiting almost 12 years for a baby. And this sentence is speaking directly to me in the decisions that I have faced. So I remember looking through the book, and I just felt this peace beyond measure around me, that they had 3 boys initially, and they had done foster care for a while. They'd had some miscarriages, and they just really wanted to have another baby that they could help. And I remember looking at my birth counselor and saying, this is the family, put them on hold, tell them that I have picked them, and do not let any other birth mom look at them. Like, I was getting competitive again. I was like, do not, because they are mine.
They're getting my back.
Write it down. So because of the legality of open adoption, and 9 out of 10 birth moms change their mind after they have their baby, the adoption agency wasn't able to tell them that I had picked them, but they were allowed to put their book away so another birth mom could look at it. So I finish out my last 2 months. I give birth on August 18th of 2023. She's healthy. She's beautiful. I get to spend 3 days in the hospital with her. And then I get 3 days of revocation, which are the 72 hours that I'm legally allowed to decide if I want to redact all the decisions that I have made or if I want to continue with open adoption. So during the 72-hour revocation, I was allowed to see her during the day, and then at night she would be taken to interim care, which is a couple that their ministry is to keep the babies during the mom's revocation. So I remember still telling my birth counselor, please tell them they have a baby, because they would get a call less than 24 hours and saying, hey, we're bringing a baby to your home, like somebody picked you. And I was like, I'm not going to change my mind. Please tell them. Well, 48 hours before the adoption was finalized, the mom of the baby, or we'll call her Sophia. That's what I named her at the hospital. Sophia's mom called the agency and said, hey, we have an opportunity to foster a little boy. We want to know, has any birth mom even shown interest in our book? Because if not, we will take this boy into foster care. And my birth counselor was like, I can't tell you anything, but do not take that boy.
Yeah.
And so the family they knew that they had at the very least been put as an option. So the 72 hours went by, and my birthday's on August 21st. So I was able to spend my 20th birthday with her. We had some close family friends come over and we celebrated our birthdays. But I mean, Alexis, those are the 3 hardest days of my life easily. Yeah. I mean, having to tell my parents that I was pregnant is not even close to how difficult those days were. And a lot of it goes back to what I wanted. I knew I would be a good mom. I knew that I could raise her well. I knew that she would have a good life. I knew that my parents would be there, and it would be so fun to have friends get to know her. But all the decisions that kept me from doing the adoption plan had to do with me and what I wanted. And what I knew was best for my daughter was for her to be raised around a family that is intact, that has a mother and a father who are there and present and willing. And while me and her father both would have been present, it wouldn't have been in the way that God had imagined a family to look like. And it was so important for me for her to have a dad, because I knew the way that my dad had grown up with men in and out of the house, and it was just not something that I had ever thought I would be putting my child in a position to potentially have to endure, or that I would even be in a spot where I'd have to make that decision. But that was a really big part for me, was that she had a dad. And so I knew without a shadow of a doubt that while I am suffering and while there is so much pain within having to make this decision, the greater pain would be the not following in accordance with what I believe the Lord is calling me to do.
Yeah.
I had lived so much of my life in secrecy and deceitfulness and rebellion that I thought, at the very least, let me follow God in this. And any way I tried to maneuver it, it ended up leading back to the Lord asking me, and I believe telling me, to place my daughter for open adoption.
Oh, that is so beautiful, girl. Like, I just started almost crying, full on bawling, because that, just the fact that when you opened it up and you read that first line and it just spoke to your spirit, because sometimes God sends signs. It's not just scripture. Sometimes your spirit just connects, and definite no's. And so for you, you're like, I know. But then you're saying those 3 days too, like, you know that this is the decision, this is what God's calling you to do, but you're going back and forth, like you're being torn. Like, I can only imagine like how hard that was for you, girl. Like,
Yeah. Because there's no wrong answer. Yeah, that was the thing, is I can glorify God in parenting, and I can glorify God in placing her for open adoption. But it ultimately led down to what is the best decision for her. And at that time, I believe, and I still do, that it was to put her in an environment where she would have a lot more access to abilities and things around her, and just a lot more fruitful life and less hardship. So
what does that open adoption kind of look like for you?
So legally, twice a year, I can't remember the age, it could be 5 or 10. Legally, twice a year, I am able to see her. And so that communication usually goes from me to the agency to the parents. Well, immediately we connected after she was placed in August. I met with the family for the first time in September because they wanted to meet us. And it was a very interesting case for the agency because most of the birth moms, unfortunately, have been in sexual assault situations or have had issues struggling and battling with drugs or alcohol. So they're not in a position emotionally or physically to pursue that relationship with the family. So a lot of times the agency has to wait till the baby's maybe 3 or 4 for the mom to see them for the first time. So for us, we were immediately like, let's see the baby. We're ready. Whenever they're comfortable, let's do it. Well, we pretty much removed the agency. We were like, thanks, you guys did your part. Connected us.
You're good.
So now we have consistent communication. I see her right now for her birthday. I'll see her in September. We'll share like our little birthday together. I see her in February and in August legally. Then I see her for our birthdays and then Mother's Day and then potentially Thanksgiving and Christmas. But it is the kind of relationship where there's no right or wrong. You just have to feel it out. What is the most comfortable? Where are the boundaries? Once she's old enough to truly, she'll grow up knowing who I am, knowing the decisions that me and her father made. He also has equal access in the visitations and the time that he gets to spend with her. And she'll be able to decide whether that's 10, 11, 12. I do want to see her more or I want to see her less.
Wow.
And so that's obviously something that every single day there's fear and anxiety around that. But as of right now, she'll be 2 on August 18th. I'll see her, in September. I get to see her periodically. I could call them and say, hey, can I come up there for a day and hang out with y'all? And they would say yes. So it's just such a beautiful example of rewarding not only the family and the baby, but also rewarding the mom. Because a lot of times I think within the, for lack of a better word, maybe church or pro-life movement, we forget about the mom. And it's an opportunity for me to be able to witness my daughter grow up and have an amazing life and not have to just shut that part out and act like it never happened when that is such a toll on me. And then the baby not having to look up when they're 18. Who is my mom? What does she look like? There's constant communication. There's consistent answers to questions. And I say this phrase a lot when I speak about the situation is I didn't lose my daughter. I gained a whole new family. They are now part of our family, and her grandparents are my grandparents, and my mom and dad are John and Dessa's friends. That's the parents' names. And it is just, it's almost like an extended family situation. Yeah. It's not even a weird stranger situation.
Oh, girl, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I will say that when she came to your testimony, that is a beautiful baby, girl. You make beautiful babies.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. So I wish we could go on because I really do have so many other questions, but we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. So I guess let me give you an opportunity to maybe say something that you haven't got to say in this, maybe a piece of advice, or maybe something that God's revealed to you more recently. Like, how do you want to close this?
Yeah, I would say that I obviously want to remind any mother out there who's facing an unexpected pregnancy that, number one, you're not alone. There's tons of resources and churches and people that want to help. Number two, that you do have options. Abortion doesn't have to be the only option for you. When we say the word choice, we should emphasize that there is a choice, but it's not just the choice to kill your child. There are other options. There are other avenues in which you can still have a fruitful life. A lot of the women that I've gotten the opportunity to work with will say, I don't want to lose my life. I don't want to lose what I have. And not that that was the whole goal for me, but I'm exactly back where I was prior to getting pregnant. I could go play basketball right now somewhere if I wanted to. And so there is such an opportunity for us as a church and as a body of believers to care for the mother and the father in these difficult situations and lead them to other avenues. I don't want open adoption to be normalized because it's a broken situation, finding healing through different avenues. But I do want it to not to be such a stigma around adoption. I want people to, hopefully after this podcast, be able to understand the obviously difficult choices that come with that, but the redemption through open adoption and the redemption through submitting your life to Christ. And I think lastly, I would just call on people to have a heart for expectant mothers. I think that a lot of times something that came to mind this summer for me was, why do we, and not when I say the church, I don't refer to Southside, I just mean as like the church, as like America. Why do we mourn Mary when she was turned away from multiple doors looking for somewhere to have Jesus? But when we see a young mother walk through the doors on Sunday, we look at her and scoff.
Ooh, girl.
Like there's something there that we as a church are missing when we try to make Sunday the one day where we walk in and we act as though everything's okay at the one place where we should be the most open and raw. And I would just want to encourage believers to not be scared to share your sin, because that's what makes our faith so beautiful, is that the Lord uses broken people for his purpose. And so I think that would be my ultimate last ending statement is...
And that was a statement.
Thank you.
That was good, girl. Wow. Like, you clocked it, for real. You clocked that tape. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. This has been absolutely incredible. Please reach out. If you are struggling with something, please reach out. I'll put Gwyn's username in the bio because I know that she loves to reach out and talk to people and just connect. So please stay tuned, stay blessed, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.